Umkhonto weSizwe Party Secretary-General Floyd Shivambu says efforts must be made to rise above subjectivity. In an exclusive interview with SABC News, Shivambu says childishness and subjectivity will undermine the necessary cause for the unification of progressive forces. Following the 2024 national elections, the MK party emerged as the third largest party in South Africa. Through the GNU arrangement, it became the official opposition in parliament. The EFF and MKP formed the Progressive Caucus Alliance, along with other small parties like the ATM. Hailed as a strategic move to hold the GNU accountable, the Progressive Caucus has seemingly struggled to speak with one another with one voice on many issues. Here's SABC politics editor Mbeje.
I did say earlier that it's very difficult to understand the position of the EFF, because in as far as we're concerned in terms of what we got to agree, we are co-signatories of the Progressive Caucus Charter, which unites us in the anti-racist, anti-colonial, anti-imperialist agenda, which unites us in pursuing the expropriation of land without compensation, which unites us in fighting for the reclamation of our natural resources, for free education, for a progressive agenda. So like, until maybe there is something coded or written down to say that such is not what binds us together, I am unable to want to analyze the EFF based on what is said in public as rants and chants.
I think one of the things that they say quite publicly is that they feel MK is actually destroying the EFF. Perhaps you are actually the prime example that MK took their second most senior person in the EFF. Whether you did it voluntarily, but the fact of the matter is that you were the second in command in the EFF. And then,
so I'm the one who took the decision to join Umkhonto weSizwe. I was not recruited. I went to join Umkhonto weSizwe. I approached Umkhonto weSizwe to say I want to join and become an ordinary member. Because I thought that as an ordinary member I can contribute in the growth of the organization and be led as well. You know, the unfortunate reality, or fortunate, I don't know, is that since I was age 21, I've always been at national leadership level, from the SASCO, Young Communist League, ANC Youth League, EFF as a deputy president for 10 years. All of those things, I've always had national leadership responsibilities. I went to join Umkhonto weSizwe myself. I was not forced or pushed or pulled by anyone. I was pulled by a principle which I still ascribe to now. So there is no one who is destroying the economic freedom fighters. If there was an intention to do so, we could have a program to recruit members of the EFF to join Umkhonto weSizwe, which we can successfully do, by the way, including the national officials of the EFF. We can be able to recruit them, because a lot of them, when we appraised them before we joined the MK, understood squarely and fairly well why it had to be done in that particular way, including provincial and regional leaders. It can be done, but we're not in a mission of trying to destroy the EFF. We're in a mission of having a political and ideological organizational decision and discussion as to how do we unite all the progressive forces. We're having, by the way, there's a model that we have had discussion with the African Transformation Movement under the leadership of course, President Zungula and the spiritual leader, Professor Caesar Nongong. And sound discussion. There is no threat of dissolution of the ATM. And the ATM doesn't feel threatened, none whatsoever, by the MK. Joint rallies, joint programs. Actually, the membership on the ground even got to print a T-shirt which has got ATM logo this side and MK logo on the other side. So that is basically what we're busy with, of unification on an agenda of all the progressive forces. There is no intention, none whatsoever, to dissolve and liquidate any of the organizations that should form part of the progressive bloc.
We saw President Ramaphosa in the US recently, visiting President Trump. When he was inaugurated on the 20th of January, as the MKP, you issued a statement congratulating President Trump, saying he was going to perhaps help in terms of restoring or fighting for some of the oppressed people. Do you still share the same view?
No. So this is the context of the MK statement on the Mr. Donald Trump. One was that he is going to stop the support of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, which was spiking a world war through support of Ukraine and fighting against Russia. Because at some stage, if that support had continued, it was going to force Russia to then call on its strategic allies like the People's Republic of China and other friends to join in its defense. And that was going to spike a world war. Then we say that we know, as a matter of fact, because he was saying that during campaigns, that he will never associate with NATO, he will never associate with Ukraine. That is what we appreciated. The second thing is that the United States of America's imperialist program before Trump was to force-feed developing nations the so-called green transitions in terms of energy sources, which was green colonialism or neocolonialism in the manner that it is. That to the extent that South Africa almost, actually not even almost, South Africa had even agreed to close its coal power stations because the US was bullying South Africa to take that agenda. And Trump doesn't associate with the green neocolonialism that is existing in the world. Then we say that in terms of that, he's not a warmonger. He's one of the very few heads of state in America who has never gone to war, even when he was the president for the first time.
Yeah.
And that is what we got to appreciate in terms of global peace, in terms of pulling back in terms of the imperialist green agenda which was being imposed on the developing nations. But we don't agree with the politics of Donald Trump in terms of how they got to characterize South Africa's developments and politics currently. We don't associate with the racist nature and on how he relates with everyone else there. Because the engagement that happened with Mr. Ramaphosa was just a pure reflection of the racist nature of how white political leaders get to view black political leaders. First, he said, no, for you to come, you must bring white people so that they can speak on your behalf. And then Ramaphosa agrees to that. Second, he makes him to explain absolute nonsense and rubbish. The American government and intelligence services know that there is no genocide in South Africa. Why would you want to call people to come and explain that? Mkondo Wesizwe's position is that we don't agree with the politics of Donald Trump. We appreciated the two aspects in terms of the anti-war and the anti-green imperialism.
Well, moving towards closure.
Yes.
Maybe let's talk about you.
Yes.
Visiting people who are wanted here in South Africa. Shepherd Bushiri. And then your party issued a statement dissociating you from that. So what informed you to go and see someone who's wanted, who's a fugitive? So, you know, in March the 21st, we visited Namibia with President Zuma. So when we were in Namibia, in the table that we were sitting in after the official inauguration, we were sitting with former President Joyce Banda of Malawi. And we're also sitting with the incumbent Deputy President Michael Usi of Malawi as well. And then we had, because we were in a table, small talk, exchange contacts. And President Zuma said that we must make follow-up on the discussions that were being raised there. So I went to Malawi to see former President Joyce Banda, and I spent a lot of time with her. And then I went to see incumbent Deputy President Michael Usi. We had very meaningful discussions. And both are a proper leadership which can change the politics of Malawi if they were to be given whatever responsibility they can be given in the future. But also here in South Africa, we had been in discussions with
one of my former colleagues in the Pan-African Parliament called Enoch Chihana, who is one of the presidential candidates there. So we want to have a political discussion whose outcomes we will communicate once we're mandated to communicate in terms of what were the discussions. And after that, I went to see Prophet Shepherd Bushiri and to have broad discussions. I know him, like we used to have interactions when he was here in South Africa. And then he said that I'm going to a church service later on. Let's go. Where am I to could refuse to go into church? Like I've been to so many churches. I've been to the Nazareth Baptist Church. I've been to so many churches in South Africa. And what I was even interested about is that during my visit there in the Easter period, there were more than 5,000 South Africans were in Malawi to go to the church specifically, not for a political program that I was there for. More than 5,000 South Africans that were there to visit the church. I'm not a law enforcement agency. And as far as I'm concerned, there are no issues. There is no directive in Malawi. The Church of Shepherd Bushiri is protected by the Malawian state. His households are protected by the Malawian state in terms of what happens. He plays a huge role in terms of development of Malawi, in proper investments that are happening there, and appreciated by the people of Malawi.
Yeah.
I went to the church because who am I to refuse to go to the church? I had to go to the church, and I didn't speak anything at the church. I just attended to listen to the sermon.
But the optics, Mr. Shivambu, you are a leader of the official opposition in South Africa.
Yes.
And this individual is a fugitive from law in South Africa. So those optics, and on top of it, your party issues a statement dissociating itself.
Yeah, I think the unfortunate statement was out of the misunderstanding as well of what got to transpire in terms of the visit itself. And I'm not a law enforcement agency, one, but two, factually, there is no court ruling in Malawi which South Africa has been pursuing to declare or characterize Bushiri as a fugitive. If there was such, the Malawian government was going to hand him over. But I'm saying to you now that if anything, the Malawian state is protecting him like in terms of his own security, in terms of what gets to happen. And if the South African government wants to pursue him, they know what processes they must follow, they must deal with and everything else there. By the way, I can go to any church, even of convicted criminals. Like whichever church I want to go to, I can go to any religious institution as long as I believe that is a correct thing to do and everything else there. Like I'm not the only person who does that. I say to you now that there were more than 5,000 South Africans who were registered to participate.
But they're not the Secretary-General of MKP.
Yeah, they're not Secretary-General of the MK, but I have the permissibility to go to any religious institutions. I, by the way, don't know what criminal offenses the other people whose churches have visited have committed in the past or have got to participate in. But I went to Malawi for a political program which was mandated and was very impactful in terms of the Pan-Africanist program and agenda which Mkhonto Sizwe is in pursuit of uniting Pan-Africanist and progressive forces all over the world and in the continent in particular. And Malawi is of particular interest because in the struggle against apartheid, Malawi associated with the apartheid government under Hastings Banda, the president there, they openly supported apartheid. They had full economic cooperation with apartheid. And we can't have a Malawi that is not part of Pan-Africanism, of a Pan-African developmental project. So the politics of Malawi must be contested and guided from that point of view. So that is what we're busy with in Malawi. I thought I must clarify this because people thought that I was in a religious pilgrimage. I was not in a religious pilgrimage. I was in a political visit which had to deal with political issues.
Well, Mr. Shivambu, thank you very much for agreeing to sit with us and explain a number of issues, including this one.
Thank you very much for having us, and we really appreciate that the public broadcaster is truly a credible institution, and it must continue to play the role that it is playing.
Thank you very much. We try to be reflective of every voice of this country.
No, thank you.
Well, that was the Secretary-General of Umkhonto weSizwe Party, Floyd Shivambu, speaking to us a year since the country went into elections.